This is one of many candlesticks that you'll see featured in the Victorian dining room. And when you look at this, I want you to have an idea of what it meant to the owner to have a piece of light that they could carry from room to room. Remember that a lot of times you'll see pieces like this that really do predate the advent of gas light and things like this. And so these stayed on the table even through Victorian times because people liked them. They used them and they could take them into rooms that hadn't become electrified. Remember, people would sometimes bring electricity into one room and not the rest of the house. So these were still very functional and useful and something people really wanted. You'll notice with me holding it here, it's very steady. I'm not having to run around and chase it and pretend that, you know, or try not to drop it. It's really quite great just standing here just like this. That's very unusual, but that's an intentional part of its makeup. When you look at it, I want you to see a couple of things so that you understand fully how they were first used and then implemented in later years. When you look in the top, you can see that my finger will go almost to the first joint inside the socle, which is the top piece. That's because this originally held tallow and string. So this was literally a little pot of heated or on fire animal fat that functioned as a candle. In later years, a candle could be inserted in here, but originally it was the tallow and fat that you've probably heard about from pioneer times. When you look under the bottom, the most interesting part is what's in here. When you look really closely, you'll see that this is really unattractive. It's kind of coming apart in little pieces. It's rusty. It doesn't have a really beautiful look to it. And you can see how our grandmothers, if they inherited this, would probably throw this out because it really looks unattractive. By the time our grandmothers came into the world, these pieces would have had a silver base here and been made by machine and looked really spiffy and good. This one instead has a ballast that kept that tallow that was originally used in the top from falling over and setting fire to curtains or to fabrics in a home or either soiling them with animal fat. So what this is carbon steel, which is a rusty, unattractive metal. In the center, you'll see a little core right here by my fingernail. And what that is an indication of a sand core, meaning melted sand that was made into liquid and poured in here that fused all the way to the top that kept this candlestick standing up straight. Now when you see all that together, you can see how important it was that this not fall over. Remember, its primary function was to light a room, not to cause a fire. Now in later years, some of you may have seen these with a piece of green felt put over the bottom, and that green felt would protect the linen that these would sit down on top of from being having rust get on them or being rusted by the outside because it would be damp and bring the water in and make a rust ring on the table. Now, the thing to remember is in the Victorian times, tablecloths were everywhere, so the likelihood of this impacting a tablecloth was great. In the time period this was originally made, which was around 1700, this would only have gone down on a piece of wood or on a big Georgian mantle over your head to light a room, and this would never have impacted what was inside, would never have impacted the wood because you wouldn't have seen it. So when you see them on the Victorian tabletop today, remember that they came from a generation or so before, and they were still used because they performed that specific function. They just added the piece of green felt so it would not ruin their linens.